Over the past year, our church has gone from being a pretty small progressive outpost on the edge of an otherwise pretty ferociously conservative city to being, in a way, two congregations. We have our seated congregation here in Springfield who have purchased and maintained this building and have created a very respectable outreach to the poor of this community while offering great adult religious education and a progressive witness in the Ozarks. But we also have this far-flung congregation who join us via our YouTube and iTunes channels, usually amounting to more than 2,000 downloads per week, and this week many more than that. I spend a significant amount of my work week answering correspondence from these people that we call our web-based church. And I continue to feed thoughts and sometimes rants to our church's Facebook page that is entitled The Emerging Church. And if you're not on that, please do visit that. As this web-based congregation has evolved, there have been two things that I've noticed that have been very surprising. And the first is that our videos are 10 times more popular than our podcasts. And I don't know why anybody would sit in front of a computer and look at a corpulent cleric week after week when they could just download the podcast to their iPhone and listen to it while they're going to work or exercising or something else. You know, if our videos had a title, I mean, if it was like a TV show, they'd probably call it something like 2.5 Chins. I mean, you know, don't enjoy that too much. Today is my birthday, of course. It's the 26th anniversary of my 30th birthday, and that means pretty soon for dinner it'll be overcooked vegetables and pureed meat. So if you see me pulling into the Golden Corral in my convertible, somebody stop me as soon as you can. I do have some quiet plans for this afternoon. I'm going to sit on the front porch of my house and yell at the neighbor kids, "You kids get off of my lawn!" My retirement, though not imminent, is now at least within sight, and it's not a pretty sight. It looks like an old man with Bermuda shorts pulled up under his armpits with black socks and sandals. I look forward to moving to a retirement home in Florida where I can criticize the government full time then. But let me move to my second observation about our internet congregation. They live all over the world. It's always been remarkable to me that I have more viewers in Asia than I have in Missouri. But we have many in Africa, South America, Europe, Australia. But demographically, I've noticed that we have two outstandingly identifiable groups of people who've joined us on a regular basis. The first is pastors, and the second is atheists. And that may sound odd at first, but I think I understand that. Being a progressive pastor in a denominational church can be like mental slavery, where you're forced to pretend to be something that you know better. You've got a better education than that, but you're being forced to pretend that you believe in magic and superstition. Many have written to me saying that our congregation gives them hope. And I want to hope with them that the mainstream church can be transformed before it dies a death of complete irrelevance. But the atheist group is different to me in a different way. They often feel obligated to self-identify as atheists. You'll notice if you look at the comments on our YouTube channel, iTunes doesn't allow comments, but if you look at the comments, 9 out of 10 of them start off with, you know, I really enjoy listening to this sermon and I'm an atheist, or I'm an atheist. And there was one that wasn't an atheist. He said, I'm a humanist. And I said, I guess a humanist at least believes something. I don't know. It gets them off of dead center. They are often flattering of me and of us, though they're almost always tinged with a sense of hopeless isolation, as if they were reaching out to me through email and in posts to say, you and I get it, but no one else does. That sense that They have found in one of my broadcast sermons someone that they identify with when they believe that there's not another one of us. It's just the two of us. And if I'm right about what I see there, that isolation they feel, that sense that they have arrived at a rational worldview, but they are surrounded by people imprisoned in misinformation, superstition, magical thinking, and fear-based politics. You know, most of what we hear in political jargon these days is rooted in fear. Then in fact, the atheist group and the group of pastors are probably joining us for exactly the same reason. You feel as if you are nearly or entirely alone, totally alone. You've had your eyes open to the real justice issues of life. You see the ravages of poverty, the discrimination against racial minorities, the discrimination against gay people, and the desperation of the sick who cannot afford health care. And then you look at the news and you see just some radio talk show host suggests that people turn out to defend gay bashing, and they line up by the millions at Chick-fil-A to support an anti-gay prejudice. The budget cuts recommended by Paul Ryan would turn Medicare into a voucher system, telling sick old people to go buy insurance on their own. And folks, that is the moral equivalent of handing them a bottle of cyanide pills, because they can't go out and buy insurance at that age. Not when they're sick, not when they're old. What they're saying is, please die for us. The Ryan budget plan is so cruel to the poor, so favorable to corporations, that a bunch of nuns came out of their convent and got on a bus and started following candidates around to talk to voters and to talk to politicians about morality. Because men and women, a budget is a moral statement. You may think that churches that have a creed, I believe in God and whatever, I'll tell you what they believe. Look at their budget. Look at a church's budget. Look at your own check register. Look at your bank statements when they come from your credit card charges. That's what you believe in. That's your real moral document. So when the federal government writes a budget, you find out what they believe in. And evidently, we believe in military spending. But evidently, we don't believe in old people or children or education or poverty programs. And of course, the Vatican sent word to these nuns telling them to stop talking about poverty so much, go back to the convent and talk about not using birth control and not getting abortions, which I think the Vatican could just put up a big billboard at the entrance that says, "We are completely irrelevant. We are completely out of touch with reality." The nuns still remember the gospel. The Vatican appears to have forgotten. And nearly every pastor knows exactly the kind of persecution that those nuns felt. Anything that smacks of the radical claims of the gospel, anything that inspired a woman or a man to go to seminary in the first place, if you try to talk about those things in your pulpit, then you're being told by your bishops, your presbyters, your board members, don't talk about politics here. Don't talk about politics. Don't say anything to offend the personal beliefs of someone in your congregation who might be pro-war or pro-slavery or pro-business. Just don't say anything that might upset anyone who donates to the church or will fire you. It's happened to me. In our scripture text from 1 Kings, Elijah runs away. Elijah left the ministry. He left the church, and he's hiding from everyone. He lies down and he says to God, "You know, why don't you just go ahead and kill me? Why don't you just kill me? Because nothing makes sense anymore." If you looked under the bushes in that part of the wilderness where Elijah was hiding, you'd probably find an embittered pastor or a cynical atheist hiding under every bush. The most recent issue of Newsweek magazine has an article in it entitled, America the anxious, because there's no jobs. Unemployment is horrible. National debt threatens our future. Education is becoming too expensive for the middle class to even consider. Wages are stagnant, but healthcare costs are going up rapidly. And people who had planned to retire by now just can't. Shoot, there's still people screaming about illegal immigration in the United States, and what they don't even know is that there are more aliens leaving the United States than coming in, because there's no jobs here either. So Elijah did just exactly what Mitt Romney has suggested. He self-deported. John Shelby, don't hold back. John Shelby Spong says that the fastest growing religious community in the United States is the Church Alumni Association, because people are self-deporting from church, because it doesn't matter anymore. They never hear anything that matters. Nothing important is ever discussed, because if the pastor tries to say something important, that pastor will become unemployed. Churches either insult your intelligence or they insult your morals. When people who watch my sermons regularly tell me that they are atheists, I have to believe that what they're saying is that they no longer believe in the moralizing, guilt-producing, threatening, supernatural deity who is, after all, the imaginary friend of fundamentalists. Of course, we don't believe in that God either. I'm just not willing to, once you reject the heaven and hell gamble or the anthropomorphic super Santa who waits in the clouds to grant our wishes, once you get rid of that, I'm not willing to run out into the wilderness and lay down and die. A couple of people write to me every week to say, if you had been my pastor years ago, I wouldn't have left the church, which I know they mean as a compliment, but darn it, if you're not writing on stationery from the cancer ward, why are you talking about yourself in the past tense? There's nothing special about me. I'm not doing anything that every other pastor in America couldn't do. And you're not doing anything that every other church member in America couldn't do if they would just do it. But they keep self-describing themselves as retired. And that's really what atheist means. I've just quit trying to care. The desert is littered with prophets hiding under the bushes, filled with self-pity because your Sunday school teacher told you lies. Your parents use guilt and shame to keep you from having sex or using drugs, and now you want your Sunday school offering money back. The wilderness is full of preachers who have given up. They wouldn't say they've given up. They don't think they've given up. They're just sitting under a scrub bush thinking very sophisticated thoughts. They have very liberal views. They read very liberal books. And when they get together in the back of a coffee shop, they talk about very liberal things. And if the universe existed only between their ears, they're right on target. If, however, you try to apply that to the real world where they live, they are just smug, self-righteous, and worthless. Now, in this very metaphorical text that we read, and I want to insist, you let go of trying to read these Old Testament texts as if they were describing history. Not historical. These things didn't happen that way. They're metaphorical stories. In that sense, they are sermons. You have to listen to them as a sermon. And folks, I don't know if I'm giving away a trade secret here, but we exaggerate. This is one of our tools of trade. So they're telling a story. The issue is for you to understand the point of the sermon, not to try to make it historical. The sermon says, the story says, the prophet has run into the wilderness to die, and an angel appears to him. Now that doesn't happen, right? So anytime you read something in Scripture that doesn't happen, you know it's metaphor, right? So he's out in the wilderness wishing he was dead. That part happens all the time. But then an angel appears to him and basically says, you just need to get over yourself and go back to work. You have to be able to hear it through the religious language. They didn't write that way back then, but basically that's what it says. He had gone out there to die of hunger and thirst, and the angel brought him water and food and said, "Preacher, you've got to get up and eat your fried chicken and drink your sweet tea because you're going to need some strength. You've got a lot of work yet to do." I understand that saying that you're an atheist is a way of protecting yourself from disappointments that have marked your family and your religious history. I'm not asking you to believe something that you can't believe. I'm not asking you to believe what no one can know. I'm not asking you to believe in what you cannot see. I am asking you to open your eyes, to look at the sky, the sea, the land. Look at the trees, the rivers, the people, the children, the elderly. Can't you see the disabled and the sick? Can't you see the pollution? Can't you see the emptiness in the eyes of teenagers who have lost hope, who can't get an education and will never be able to earn a living wage? Can't you see the elderly at Walmart or carrying out groceries at Harder House, sweeping the floors in hotels because they cannot afford to retire? And if they gave in to their aching feet and their sore back and their chest pains, if they just sat down, they would die. You can't see God, but unless you're blind, you can see the suffering all around you. And I'm telling you that the separation that you believe exists between you and those people, that's an illusion. That separation doesn't exist. You are those people. Call that spirit that connects you to our polluted earth and our impoverished humanity, call that God. If you can't believe in that God, then there's just a cold, hard place where your heart was supposed to be beating. Pastors, as your denominations decline, they will lay off workers, they will consolidate jobs in their headquarters, and the best and the brightest will be the first to go. Because when an institution starts to shrink, the people with the most Machiavellian, the people with the meanest, most underhanded, deceptive techniques will keep their jobs. So as your denominational headquarters have become smaller and smaller and smaller, the people who are left are oftentimes the enemy of the gospel. They are oftentimes the most immoral people who, if there wasn't a separation of church and state, might be in prison. Some of you need to remember that you did not go to seminary in order to serve the bureaucracy. Some of you need to get your heads out of the clouds, and most of you need to get your heads out from between your legs. We need your education. We need your experience. We need your ability to write, to speak, to inspire, to lead. But if you've allowed your cowardice to make your professional decisions for you, then you are a waste of breath. On Tuesday, there'll be 30 or 40 of us gathered in front of Senator Blunt's office to protest his desire to keep women and the elderly from having access to health care. And I know Senator Blunt. He is not going to pay one bit of attention to us, and we won't accomplish anything other than spending an hour with a couple of dozen of good-hearted people that we'll be standing around on the sidewalk with. But if all of you would come out of the wilderness, if you would come out from under your bushes and come running and join us, if there were thousands of us there, then Roy Blunt would come out to have his photograph made with us. In any number of efforts regarding war, poverty, pollution, discrimination, crime, racism, sexism, declining employment, declining compensation, it is true that things are getting worse. And when you're done with your pity party and you decide to get back to work and get involved to change the world, we can make a difference. Amen. And when you get back, thank you, when you get back from the wilderness and you join us in the streets, you'll find us there waiting for you, because we're not afraid and we're not going to quit.
You've been watching a progressive Christian video from the Community Christian Church of Springfield, Missouri. We encourage our viewers to donate to our efforts in feeding the homeless and hungry of our community. Write to us at reverend.ray@aol.com for more information.